this video, I'm going to share a snippet from our high level coaching group who pay around $12,000 each year to have access to this. And you're going to get it for free. You're welcome. All right. And you can thank me after you've seen the video. But very excited to share this with you. We used the same systems I'm about to share with you now in our business to scale to 50, 60 in recurring income in just a matter of 4 to 5 months. And just for the record, this applies to any type of agency selling. This is one part of it, but our ethos is all about creating clean systems, clean processes that you can implement to attract, close, and onboard high value clients quickly, easily by removing the resistance or lowering the resistance and increasing the trust quickly and throughout the process. So it becomes a seamless affair, right? But if you don't handle that at the beginning, then it can be a challenge. And so enjoy it. Today's about the pivot system to inspire change when change is difficult, because first we've got to change the prospect's thinking. And if we can do that, then everything else falls into place, right? And so enjoy it. It's my proprietary system. Let me know what you think. Please, if you like the video at the end, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I'll leave you to it. Thank you very much. Check it out. Thanks. Hello, everybody. This is Jay Cruz. Welcome to this video. I help agencies to scale very quickly by implementing clean, easy to use processes. So as I said, we've sort of pioneered this sales strategy to work for agencies specifically, but it brings all the best from what I've seen out there, okay? So I call it pivot because it's about them pivoting their mindset, them pivoting their beliefs almost, and understanding why content marketing has got the best ROI, hands down. And it's been proven time and time again. It's just a matter of them understanding that. Anyway, so the whole idea is to change their mindset behaviors, enabling them to achieve their desired outcomes. The key elements I'll talk about, but it's picture the vision, identify the reality, validate the problem, obtain permission, and then tailor solution. Yeah. And each component plays a critical role in them talking themselves into the next steps. Yeah. It's very, very important that they do that. And if any of you have got experience, lots of you have in business, some of you way longer than even I have, in selling and stuff like that, you'll understand that, right? And you'll appreciate it. So we really want to utilize the system so that prospects can clarify their own goals, not you clarifying their goals, them clarifying their own goals, and you leading them through that process as a guide and as a mentor almost, right? That's the kind of position we want to take, almost like a doctor. A doctor doesn't mess around with, how's the weather and all this kind of shit, right? They just cut straight to it. Where does it hurt? When I lift your arm, does it hurt here? And if you start cracking jokes, it's like, I haven't got time for that. Like, does it hurt when I do this? And what about here? And then they sort of diagnose the problem, right? That's kind of the neutral approach that we're trying to take. So that they feel empowered to embrace change and ultimately leading to more informed decision-making for the long term. So we all start with the integrity intro. So this is a foundation of trust, and everything that I teach, is because we don't have long with a prospect. And I've seen too many sales systems beat around bushes and go in wrong directions, in my opinion, because what they failed to do quickly enough is boost trust and lower resistance almost simultaneously. But check this out. So this is how we normally introduce calls, right? So I'll say something like, I can see Lacey here. So I'll say, hey, Lacey, I'll dig into a simple agenda in a second, which means I know what I'm talking about. There is a structure to the call, right? But first, I'll explain what the call will be about today. So I'm afraid there'll be no offer. Straight away, trust is going up, yeah? So it's like, and sometimes I play with that and say, look, I'm really sorry. You probably expected an offer. There is none today, all right? Unfortunately, because firstly, this is a fairly light call to get to know you, what you're working on, what your overall goals are, and whether we are right to even help you to achieve your overall goals, directly. And here's the thing, if we cannot fix a specific problem that you have around content, traffic, I'll get into that a little bit later, that you have right now, we're not going to be right for you at this stage, right? So I'll let you know right away, so we're not wasting any more time. Is that cool? Does that work for you? Right? And then we move straight on to, well, if we both feel like, yes, we're aligned and this is clearly a problem we can help you with, once I identify them, hence the first call, we'll then move on to locking in another call where I dig deeper into your position amongst competitors with a full but easy to understand competitor analysis. Obviously, it's going to take me time to build that out. I'm not going to go into all of that. We speak to a lot of people. I want to make sure that, this is something which we both want. And then I'll go ahead and put that work in. And then we'll begin to look at attacking the market with value-driven quality content, all right? And if for any reason it turns out we are not right to move forward, then I will 100% point you in a solid direction to leave you better than I found you, to get results faster and begin working on the right stuff, even if that's not with us. Okay. So right off the bat, you're laying down, again, it's got good psychology and all that kind of stuff. But as you'll find, the way that I sell has got nothing to do with emotion. It's very little emotion, because emotion, if you have to bring in emotion into a sale, then your product's not good enough. Not to say no emotion. Of course, you can talk about the weather at the beginning or whatever, but you snap straight into this intro and you set the stage. We're serious. We're here to do business and we're here to help you. Okay. So then after you've done the integrity intro, you move into the easy agenda with the initial pivot steps, which is P, I, and V. Okay. So this is picture the vision. So you help the prospect to visualize what their ideal outcome is. I like to start with their vision first, where they want to go first. Yeah. A lot of salespeople or sales processes talk about, tell me about the business and what you're doing now. That's fine. That's cool. But what I've found works really well is you stretch the vision first. And I would have done that with every single one of you on the Ascension call, because it's a really good template, because that begins to future pace them into solving the problem. Yeah. So then we talk about reality. We come back to where they are right now to understand what's going on in the business. That creates, you might have heard of gap selling or whatever. It's kind of like that, right? You're stretching it out and you're trying to see where they're at the moment. So it creates a nice bit of tension. And then finally, we validate the problem to confirm the key challenges prospect faces and ensure they are accurately labeled. So a quick, easy agenda as an example is on the screen. So as soon as I've done that intro, I'll move into right. So the agenda is as follows, and I always stick to 3. But the most important part of this is that there's a mutual decision, as you can see in point 3 here, to either call it, in which case you can point them in the right direction, or if you see this is fixing a specific problem, we'll lock in a follow-up call to dive in a little bit deeper. By the way, this is literally your call. So if you want to add anything to the agenda, it's again another attempt at giving them a bit of power and autonomy, especially when you deal with high power businesses, right? They don't have time. Has anyone ever faced a prospect who says, can you get to the point? All that kind of stuff. Has that ever happened? Right? Can you get to the point quickly? What is this about? What's the pricing? Things like that. This is going to help you to, again, build that trust, lower resistance. So they're thinking, okay, he's got an agenda or she's got an agenda. They know what they're talking about. And yeah, I don't want to add anything. So they're already feeling like they're contributing, right? And then you can move forward. All right. Okay. So we'll talk about picture and division first. And I'll be going into how we use Ahrefs and all that kind of stuff in a second to do competitor, basic competitor analysis before the second call. So that's call 1. But what you really want to know is what motivated them to book in the call. Yeah. So you just ask that up front. What motivated you to be here on this call right now? What's going on in the business? Where do you want to take this? And identify what they want to achieve in the next 12 to 24 months. So then you can start exploring the goals. Now, this is an important question because, if they start saying, right, I want to increase my traffic and my content, which is where you want to take the conversation, or even their business overall, it's a good anchoring point to then start, coloring in what's going on, right? And where they want to go. And so questions that dig in deeper are stuff like, well, tell me more about that. Let me understand that a bit better. How quickly do you want to achieve that? All of that kind of stuff, right? And so I find 12 to 24 months is a good period because it stretches it out just enough. And then you can determine, again, if it's a priority, that urgency is going to be important so you don't get ghosted later on, right? And also you don't mess around with dealing with the wrong prospect. Then you can discuss potential obstacles that may hinder the progress toward their vision. So a big question to ask is, okay, so let's say they want to grow their traffic and their visibility and their business overall, which is obviously, linked to their traffic. You can ask, well, what's getting in the way of achieving that right now, which is then going to bring us into the next part, which is identifying the reality. There's 3 main things here that you want to cover. Number 1 is unique selling proposition, right? We want to put the pressure on the prospect to say, look, ultimately, if you don't have a USP, if you don't have something that's clearly distinguishable in terms of what you offer, then potentially this isn't going to work well for you. Because what I'll talk about this later, but we cover very specific things to bring you the best and, the exact type of customers, patients, or whatever that you want to bring through the door. So ask them that up front, yeah? And establish that early because you'll save yourself a lot of headache. Second is past attempts and revenue. So you evaluate previous strategies and their effectiveness in generating revenue. So this links to their vision. So what they want to achieve, well, what's held you back from that? What's got in the way of that? And then that naturally, comes into here. And then finally, website conversion and competition. So analyzing website conversion rates and identifying key competitors in the market, which I'll cover in just a second here. But this is super important because what you want to do here is you want to ask a very important question, which is how well is the website converting? And a good follow-up question to that is how well are you cross-selling your different products and services? Now, the cross-sell question is really powerful because it gets you into this whole world of, like they'll know you know what you're talking about, but also that really determines how well the website is converting, right? And you can get into the data points and stuff like that. That's cool. But I find if they can have a really high level conversation on how well they're bringing in a prospect, right? Introducing them to other products and services that they have, and they have a really, really good cross-selling structure, right? Then that determines, for me, a really, really good prospect. And that gets me excited, right? And you can say these things on the call. You can say, look, if you got the cross-selling down, then that means you know what you're doing. Because otherwise, I can send you as much traffic in the world and build that up, and it's not going to convert well, right? It's pretty obvious. We then move on to anchoring the competition, which is part of the reality of the situation. So seeing who their competitors are, but the way that we do this is covering three key points. Number one is traffic challenges. So you assess the current traffic levels, okay, and you ask them what they think it will take to reach the levels of their competitor, and what obstacles are preventing this right now. So this is where the really interesting piece comes in, where we use something called Ahrefs. Some of you will be familiar with either Ahrefs or SEMrush or a few of the other tools out there. Typically, when I bring up a prospect, I'll say, look, let's look at your current traffic. This is an opticians. We have a case study agency in the UK that we sell just to opticians because we're just testing something out in that market. So this is one of the clients in that agency, and the way that we pitched them was we brought them up and we start looking at their traffic, and the traffic is a beautiful thing, of course, but having it on the screen means you can ask questions about their story, and it begins to build a picture, right? If there's spikes or if it's suddenly gone up after a certain period of time, or there's a trend, you can ask them what they're doing around that. Yeah, which again gives you an insight into the business, their challenges, and what they've tried. But also because you're focusing on data, it's a different conversation to hypotheticals. Do you know what I mean? So they take you a lot more serious. And the key elements we want to look at is the domain rating, the referring domains, and of course the traffic. They're the main metrics that I would start with, right? And I'll talk more about this in a second, as to why it applies. But the other thing then is with the referring domains, when you click that, you can see something starts to happen 17th of January 2024, right? And it's steadily been going up since. Now, referring domains, without getting technical, is just the number of websites that are mentioning and talking about this particular business. The more of those you have, obviously, the more popular they're going to be, and the more traffic they're gonna generate, right? Now, the more referring domains, more websites that you have talking about you that are higher quality websites, then the higher your domain rating starts to go. 10 years ago, maybe a little bit longer, the more backlinks you have, the better your domain rating and stuff like that, because Google used to, boost you, because it's an indicator of how popular you are. But obviously now Google's caught on to that. So it's about the quality of the websites that are referring to you, which is why when you have a conversation with prospects, it scares them because they start to realize the impact that their negligence and their shortcuts have had on the domain rating. All the pages you've published on your website are greenlit, and you start to rank. And that's why these big companies, when you Google random stuff, they appear for all sorts of things, right? Because their domain rating typically is 80 plus. Big brands have a domain rating of around 90 plus in that region. But the businesses you're talking to, you want to tell them as a boutique business, you want to be around 40 to 50. If you get to 40 or 50, that's a great place to be, because then any content you add to your website, any content existing on your website starts to rank way, way easier. Now, what happens invariably is then they start going, okay, well, what does this mean? And you say, well, you want traffic, right? Traffic means business. You've got 157 people visiting your site every single month. And you're right, these guys are kicking ass. They're 10xing you right now, right? So you're literally linking all these data points directly to the main thing that they want is to grow, is to have traffic. And they see this and they think, holy shit, like this guy is really, really killing it. How do I get there? And then it becomes increasingly obvious that they need to increase the number of referring domains that they have, right? In order to catch them. And what increases referring domains? that you can offer them. Amps, easiest way, right? And so the more amps you do, and if you've got big six, even better. But then suddenly what you're doing is you're having a completely different conversation with the prospect than you would have, selling amps on a normal basis, right? So it completely flips the script and it becomes about data points. It becomes about catching a competitor and you're anchoring their success to metrics you can actually move. And so that's where the play comes in. So anyway, then the authority issues, you can examine the authority your competitors have built. That's the brand authority, the brand mentions, and ask them, oh, your brand mentions don't seem to be as high. Can I ask why that is? Like, what are you doing for brand mentions right now? So what you'll notice is that the conversation we're having and the language we're using, that no one would have spoken to him about that, right? Even SEOs won't really go into this depth because they can't, again, the way we sell Amplify has to be unique because Amplify is unique. But that means the sales process is unique, which is your brand in and of itself, if that makes sense, which will help you to increase your authority. And if nothing else, it will definitely, create a lot of interest in what you're doing, right? Okay, so then we move on to V, which is validate the label. So once we've built a picture of where they want to be, we built a picture of their problems and identify the reality of where they are right now. Then we summarize very simply. We go through all the issues so they know that they're being heard. Chris and I often have said this, over the years. Me particularly in the sales training I've done in the past. If any of you were part of the King's Rule and saw that, but the biggest gift you can give someone is the feeling of being understood. Business owners are no different. If you can repeat back to a business owner the exact problems that they have, and you've gone, deep enough, right? Then they're going to think that you have the ability to solve them, which you do. Okay? And they're going to see you as that guide. And that's important because it's all about leading the prospect through this whole process. And I would always showcase tactical vulnerability, which is just a case of no ego and asking them at the end and saying, it seems like these are the issues, it seems like these are the problems and the challenges. But I would always ask them if that aligns with the reality, right? So I'd always say something like, look, again, I've gone into depth about your business, but if I'm off at any point in terms of my summary, please let me know. But that just shows that, again, you want to be right in terms of helping them as opposed to being right for the sake of being right. Does that make sense? Small but very important thing. Then we move on to O, which is obtaining permission. So before you pitch anything, whether you're pushing for another call, and in this process we are because it's a two-call process, you need to demonstrate respect for the prospect and ask them if it's okay that you run them through options of what's going to happen next. That's it. It's just simple. It's just respect. You obtain that permission. You would have seen this in any sales process, but it's done in a very respectful way. And if you build on this with the summary that we talked about, then it's a great 1-2, right? And so this is just like, look, thanks for giving me all that information. Thanks for agreeing with the summary or correcting me or whatever. Now we're going to have two options, right? And the options are, I can show you a little bit more in terms of and answer your questions and things like that, and talk about potentially agreeing on another call if you want me to go deep dive and build a proper competitor analysis. And all of the points that I talked about earlier probably went over your head, so I can put them into a proper table, and we can talk about that on the next call. And then typically I would show them an example of that, right? So you can say something like, for example, this is one I've done for a previous client. You can see their business and you can see their competitors. And all the points that I talked about today are nicely present. And then you say, or of course, we can just leave the conversation as it is. If you didn't like anything I said, or if you're not interested, that's completely fine too. So you tell me where you want to go and we can take it from there. You give them the option, and then you just move towards tailoring the solution. And on call one, the solution that we can tailor, of course, you always tell them, look, I have to go away and build a proposal and competitor analysis. I can do that provided you want one. But right off the bat, these are the two things that you can demonstrate right there and then, which will get them excited. Yeah. Number one is quick brand wins. Certainly, trust is everything. The first thing people are going to do is Google their name, their brand, and reviews. Their name, their brand, pricing is also another one. And again, you can build a list of 3 to 5 of these, and show them right there and then. Google them and show them that they're not showing up for it, or if they're showing up for it, there's no premium or there's no AMP on it, right? Which is a third-party authority site talking about their business, which is very different to you tooting your own horn. Yeah. And the more of these AMPs we do and the more content we do on authority sites, of course, we can dominate that page completely and you can dominate your brand. Because the big thing people don't realize, the amount of people that you're creating an appetite for content with that are not buying with you are literally being hemorrhaged or even worse, are going to a competitor because 82% of people will research a brand before making a buying decision. That's a fact. And you can pull that one offline, right? But it's the fact. This is why bigger companies and bigger brands dominate because they're doing both. And then you go back to the referring domains example, the pages, and show their competitors. Does that make sense? So it all starts to come full circle. Yeah. Okay, and then you move on to tailoring the solution part two, because this concludes core one, and you build all this out and say, look, I don't want to say too much right now, but these are really quick wins that you can do. Provided if you wanted to go away and do that, you can create content on your own brand tomorrow, and it will increase your conversions, for sure, right? By at least a couple of percent minimum, right? And add a couple of sales for you in the next 6 months. But if you want to go deeper, we'll talk about core two, and then it opens up the conversation about core two, which I won't cover today because I think you guys have been absolutely battered with this information. So, but yeah, so hopefully that was helpful for you guys. After you take them through a slick process like this, which is, by the way, it's taken us years to get to, but you know, if you take them through a process like this, they're going to ask you how much it costs, right? Because they're going to be very interested, or at least want an idea of how much it would be.